In the global fast food arena, there is one law. The house always wins. And that house is a golden M. McDonald's has over 40,000 stores in more than 100 countries. They are the undisputed heavyweight champion of the fast food world. Except for one. Welcome to the Philippines. The one country on earth where the golden arches bow. Here, a smiling red bee isn't just a mascot, it's a national icon. Jollibee doesn't compete with McDonald's around here, it dominates. As of this year, Jollibee has over 1,200 stores in the Philippines. McDonald's, around 700. How? How did a local startup go head-to-head with the single greatest food empire in human history and won? This is one of my favorite topics. It's the definitive Filipino business story of David versus Goliath. This wasn't an accident. It was a strategy. The Jollibee Formula. Tara! To understand the battle, you have to understand the arena. The 1970s Philippines. The fast food scene was, well, it wasn't really a scene. You had your local carinderias and noodle houses or mami houses, but the American-style burger joint, that was a novelty. In 1975, a chemical engineer named Tony Tan Caktiong and his family opened a small Magnolia ice cream parlor in Manila, Cubao specifically. It was good business. In a country with this level of sweltering heat, people love ice cream. But Tony noticed something. People would come in for ice cream and would usually ask them, "May ibang pagkain pa ba kayo?" So in 1978, acting on a hunch, they started selling hot food, sandwiches and burgers. They were a hit. A huge hit. So big that they decided to rebrand. They needed a name that captured their values. Jolly for happiness, and B for the hardworking Filipino. And thus, Jollibee was born. Now, Jollibee was doing great. They had a few stores, a local following, and a decent burger. They were the local champs. And then, in 1981, Goliath arrived. McDonald's opened its first store in Moraita, Manila. And you have to understand, this is not just a new restaurant. This was a cultural event. This was America. This was the Big Mac. They had a global brand, a supply chain that ran with military precision, and a $1 billion marketing budget. The story goes that Jollibee's advisors all told Tony the same thing. You can't win, sell your stores to McDonald's, become their franchisee. Think about that. The logical move was to surrender. To admit that the local champ had no chance against the world champ. But Tony, being Tony, refused. He believed a small Filipino bee could fight a global giant. But he knew he couldn't fight on their own terms. He couldn't out-McDonald McDonald's. He had to create his own game. And that game started with the palate. This is Jollibee's greatest weapon. And to any Italian watching, it feels like a declaration of war. At least in a culinary sense. McDonald's made a critical and logical error. They believed that to win, they had to sell their own globally proven standardized product. The McSpaghetti that they introduced was tomatoey, savory, and al dente. But Jollibee knew a secret. Filipinos don't generally like Italian spaghetti. We like Filipino spaghetti. And what is Filipino spaghetti? It was a spaghetti typically made by your mom for your 7th birthday, even your 1st, your 2nd, your 3rd. You get the point. It's sweet, like really sweet, loaded with sugar, and this stuff, banana ketchup. A Filipino invention from World War II when there was a tomato shortage. We added sliced hot dogs. We grate a block of processed cheese that doesn't quite melt. To an outsider, it's bizarre. To a Filipino, it's home. Jollibee didn't invent this taste by any stretch. They listened to it. They applied this logic to their entire menu. McDonald's had the apple pie, an American dessert, an American classic even. Jollibee said, "That's nice, but we don't grow a lot of apples around here. We grow mangoes." And just like that, the peach mango pie was born. A hot pocket of pure tropical genius. But the final critical blow was the main event. McDonald's was a burger joint. They sold burgers. That was their identity. But for many Filipinos, especially back then, even up to now, a meal without kanin or rice is a snack. So McDonald's asked the question, do you want fries with that? But Jollibee knew what the real question was. Isa or dalawang kanin? They didn't just sell fried chicken. They created chicken joy. It was pressure fried to be perfectly crispy. It was seasoned specifically to be paired with rice. And that gravy, that savory, magically peppery gravy, it's not just a sauce. It's practically a beverage. McDonald's was selling consistency. Jollibee was selling comfort. McDonald's was selling fast food. Jollibee was selling ulam. While McDonald's was busy trying to teach Filipinos how to eat their food, Jollibee was busy giving Filipinos what they already love. But food is only half the battle. Now they had to win one thing. Now they had to win the heart. This was a marketing showdown. McDonald's had Ronald McDonald, even then already a global icon for fun. Jollibee created a mascot that was an icon of family. And in the Philippines, family is everything. Jollibee's marketing was relentless. Their first big slogan wasn't just a slogan. It was a sensory command. Langhap sarap. They were telling you to smell the burger. It was brilliant. Yes. But their main target was and still is the traditional Filipino family. Their ads were never just about the food. They were about the moments the food created. Graduation day, your first sueldo, birthday, a weekend treat, blowout, had a bad day, those kind of things. McDonald's, with its I'm loving it slogan, focuses on the individual. It's about your personal moment of enjoyment. There's nothing wrong with that. Jollibee's slogan, Bida ang saya, is about shared joy. It feels more communal. McDonald's positioned itself as a restaurant, and Jollibee positioned itself as an extension of the Filipino home. It's where you go to celebrate. This strategy reached its ultimate form in the modern era with Kwentong Jollibee. Let's be honest, these aren't just commercials. They are short films engineered in a lab to make you cry. I'm just trying to eat my lunch and suddenly I'm weeping about a lolo who lost his wife but finds her memory in a yum burger. It's emotional manipulation, but it is genius. They're not selling chicken anymore. They're selling love. They're selling sacrifice. They're selling Filipino family values. They've created an emotional connection so deep that to not like Jollibee feels un-Filipino. Okay, so Jollibee has a superior product and the emotional high ground, but that's still not enough to win. You have to win the ground war. Location, location, location. Yeah. McDonald's, being a massive global corporation, has a standard expansion playbook. You target prime locations, malls in the big cities, major commercial centers, high visibility, high rent. Jollibee had a home field advantage. They understood the Filipino map. They knew that in any provincial town, the center of life isn't a mall. It's the poblacion. It's the triad of the town plaza, the church, and the public market. Before McDonald's even thought of opening a store in, say, Tuguegarao or Iloilo, Jollibee was already there. They were waiting for them, already the local favorite. They didn't just fight for Manila. They occupied the heartland. And how did they expand so fast, you say? With their second strategic weapon, a local-first franchise model. McDonald's franchising is a global and standardized and very expensive process. I'm not saying Jollibee's cheap neither, but Jollibee's model was built for Filipino entrepreneurs. It was cheaper, more accessible, and it empowered a network of local owners who understood their communities. A franchisee in Batangas knows what Batangueños want. A franchisee in Zamboanga knows the local culture. This created a grassroots army of owners, all flying the same red bee flag. Jollibee won the ground war, while McDonald's was busy scouting the terrain. And then, just to add insult to injury, Jollibee bought their competition. Jollibee Foods Corporation, or JFC, went on a shopping spree. You want pizza? They bought Greenwich, the #1 pizza chain in the Philippines. Want Chinese food? They bought Chowking, the #1 Chinese fast food chain. You want cake? They bought Red Ribbon. And in the most gangster 4D chess move of all time, Jollibee also bought the master franchise for Burger King in the Philippines. That's right, when you buy a Whopper, Jollibee gets a cut. It's not David versus Goliath anymore. Jollibee became Goliath. They don't just own the #1 fast food chain. They own the #1 pizza, the #1 Chinese fast food, and the country's leading bake shop, and they own their rival's rival. So the Jollibee formula is complete. It all starts with the product. They didn't just copy the global standard. They perfected the local standard. And as for the branding, they didn't just sell a product. They sold emotions and appealed to local values. And as for the third major piece of the formula, strategy, they didn't just fight for the big cities. They won the heartland and empowered local partners. This formula was so powerful, it didn't just win here in the Philippines. It's now Jollibee's playbook for global expansion. And here's the beautiful full circle part. When Jollibee opens a new store in, say, Times Square, London, Dubai, yes, they got all these foreigners curious about the chicken joy thing. It pretty much became a thing in TikTok. But the first people in that line, the ones crying or the ones who camped out overnight, are the overseas Filipino workers. Because Jollibee figured out the most important secret of all. They're not just selling sweet spaghetti or crispy chicken anymore. They're basically selling a 50,000 plane ticket in a 100 peso box. They're selling a taste of home. And that is how a small Filipino bee, armed with the perfect understanding of its people, built an empire that made a global giant look small. Now it's your turn. What's your favorite Jollibee memory? And what other Filipino brand should I do a case study on next? Let me know in the comments. And as always, salamat for watching.